What's up, Game of Thrones fans? My name is Josh and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a completely new YouTube channel and on this I'm going to be particularly talking about Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Mostly Game of Thrones as it's just kind of relevant to what's going on now. You know, with Season 6 coming out and everything and Winds of Winter being forever away. But particularly in this video I'm going to be talking about the spoilers that we know so far from Game of Thrones Season 6 and what we've seen from the trailers and what we can expect in the coming season. I'm going to break it down into little bits. First I'm going to talk about Jon Snow and Castle Black, and then I'm going to move down to the north and then King's Landing, Riverlands, finishing up in Essos. But I'm going to kick off firstly with Jon Snow. So we get this shot, I think it was in trailer 2, there's several shots of Jon Snow lying dead on a board of sorts where he's been moved since he tragically died at the end of Season 5. And we've been made to think that obviously Jon Snow's dead, but there's this unknown thing about his body that Davos feels propelled to save. The guessing is that Melisandre wants to do something with it. She's not in these shots, she's nowhere to be seen in large parts of the trailer. And Carice Van Houten, the woman who plays Melisandre, was largely not on set for most of the summer that I stalked Game of Thrones filming. But Davos obviously, he feels he needs to protect this body, and he's against the rebels within the Night's Watch, the mutineers. And my feeling is that he's going to be able to do this, but he looks as if he would die unless something happened in this sequence of events. Something has got to give. So you wonder whether or not that Jon Snow is going to rise in this first episode. Just on this point, a site called Watchers on the Wall claimed to have a guy on the inside who knew the first three episodes, and the first three are obviously the Red Woman, which everybody knows, which obviously means something big for Melisandre. The second episode is called Home, reportedly, obviously, and then the third episode is called Oathbreaker. It ties in with Oathkeeper, Brienne's Valyrian sword. But Oathbreaker really makes me think of Night's Watch and Jon finally leaving the Night's Watch. A lot of people were suggesting maybe Jon Snow doesn't come back, but there is way too much in the plot lines to drop. You know, this whole Tower of Joy sequence that we've got coming up where Bran and Bloodraven are watching the Tower of Joy happen. This is all relevant to Jon Snow's story, and only Jon Snow's story. It has very little bearing on anybody else. And it's strange that they focus this flashback entirely on the fight scene, because the fight scene is really not that important. What's the most important thing is who they're defending, why Ned Stark and his bannermen are attacking this tower, and who they're defending. And the idea is that Lyanna Stark is in there giving birth, and they are protecting the heir to the throne. I'll segue now into the north, because this leads nicely into why the wildlings end up at the Battle of the Bastards, which is what it's been called by apparently people on set. We get a shot of Tormund, and the other voice we hear him talking about how he thought Jon Snow was to be the man to lead them through the long night, but he wasn't. But what he actually says is, I thought he was the man to lead us through the long nights, but I was wrong. And I think that he is actually talking about Mance Rayder. He never really thought that Jon Snow was the man to lead him through the long night. He liked him, but he was never sure that he was the guy. And I would even go as far to say that he's talking to Jon after they hook up later on. We also have a shot of Wun breaking into what looks like Castle Black. Many people have thought it's Winterfell, but I'm gonna say it's Castle Black. And it's difficult to tell when this is going to happen. I think it's in episode 1. I think it's in keeping with the nighttime looks that we've had from other shots. And I think that him breaking through is, in fact, it even could be what saves Davos in the first place. And it could explain Melisandre's strange disappearance. You know, she doesn't just nip off to the toilet, you know, that doesn't happen. And then perhaps in episode 3, which is titled Oathbreaker, is when Jon Snow decides to break his vows for the Night's Watch. We get a lot of battle shots in this trailer recently, and people who were following Game of Thrones in the off seasons, like geeks like me, would know that they were filming for 9 weeks in a place called Saintfield in Northern Ireland, and it was widely reported that they were filming this huge battle scene that was very character driven. It was very specified. It was very character driven, and that all of the main characters around the north were were there. And eventually we got a shot of Kit Harington on set, and lots of details. They called it the Battle of the Six Armies, but eventually they called it the Battle of the Bastards, which suggests that you have Ramsay Bolton on one side and Jon Snow on the other side. And it ties into a lot of different plots. I mean, it feels like it pulls a big pool of characters into one area, which is why I think it's going to be an absolutely incredible sequence. You know, Sansa, after escaping from Winterfell, has to find her way. I mean, the first place that she would go to is Castle Black. I don't think she'll get to Castle Black, but she will definitely bump into Davos, and she will definitely bump into Jon Snow. You get this shot of Sansa in a room with a chandelier. We don't know where it is, but in the second trailer we get a shot of Davos, and the same chandelier is behind him. And behind him, also on the right hand side, are the Mormont sigil. The head of the house at the moment is a woman, it was a young girl who actually sent a letter to Jon Snow in season 5 where the girl said that, you know, we bow to the Starks and nobody else. So I think that that's where they've gone, and they will spend the season together rallying support. Another Stark who's rumoured to be coming back for this season is Rickon, and I really fear for Rickon for one reason. You can see an Umber sigil behind him, and in the books the Umbers side with the Boltons, and if the Umbers have sided with the Boltons, the Umbers were the ones who were looking after Rickon at last half, looking after Rickon and Osha, and it makes me think that perhaps the 6 flayed, burning bodies on this incredible shot of the battlefield, which just looks absolutely unbelievable. It confirms that it's outside Winterfell as well, so most of the shots was quite unclear, but it confirms that it's outside Winterfell. It could be Rickon and Osha, just because the Umbers on the side of the Boltons have sort of used them as a bartering thing that's gone south, so I kind of fear for Rickon. How Jon Snow fits into this battle, it's very hard to see the wildlings going south without Jon Snow. Why would they fight? They would never fight for Sansa, they would never fight for Davos. Why would they get themselves involved in this war? And I think it's because of Jon Snow. The outcome of the battle is very, very difficult to say, but I think that it will end up with some sort of showdown between Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton. It was hinted at last year in season 5 where Jon Snow was signing letters, and he got a letter particularly from Roose Bolton, and that obviously really upset him, and you know, you could feel it in that scene that he really wanted to fight. He really wanted to be able to get involved in this battle, but he was obviously tied by the vows of the Night's Watch. So I think that'll be a nice turning point in Jon Snow's storyline, that he can actually finally do something about this. And as well, with Ramsay mentioning to Sansa that Jon Snow was Lord Commander, I think they've been kind of hinting that this battle between those two can happen, you know, for a while. So I think that, yeah, the final showdown will be Jon Snow versus Ramsay. I think Roose is finished. I think we can see this from this shot where Ramsay's cleaning his knife. I think there's a bed. He's sweaty, you know, he's had a good time. He's obviously cut somebody up, and I think it's pretty much Fat Walder and Roose. So that's the way I think it's going to finish up in the north. On to the Riverlands. The first one I'll talk about is the Pod one. Address it because everybody's getting a little bit scared that Pod's going to be torn up. But no, I think this is a shot of Bronn. I think Bronn has followed Jaime to the Riverlands, and that kind of ties in with King's Landing, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Bronn has, you know, I think this is a bit of playful roughhousing, as they say, in terms of how Brienne ties into the storyline, and I think she will hook up with Sansa, and I think Alfie Allen, who plays Theon Greyjoy, kind of gave that away, that Brienne cuts the Bolton pursuers who are pursuing Theon and Sansa to pieces, and I think that what will happen is I can't see Sansa rejecting her again. You know, she's been turned down so many times by these Stark daughters, but I think that she will finally release her from her oath once she kills Jaime Lannister. The family that done her really wrong is the, you know, the Lannister family, and a guy called Tony Teflon, who I have to say is a great YouTuber, and everybody on that small council I watch all the time. He was the one who suggested that, in fact, that Sansa is going to be the one who sends Brienne to kill Jaime, which will be a really terrible situation for Brienne to be in. Obviously, this guy that she clearly loves. They're going to be in the same place. You know, we get the shot of Jaime running through the Riverlands, leading the siege outside Riverrun. It's a tough situation as an audience to be in, because obviously Jaime's this character that's come through so much. You know, that's kind of redeemed himself for all the terrible things that he did earlier on in the series, and for him to be now put up against Brienne, another character who everybody loves, and for them to be in a situation where she has to fulfill her oath So I think that'd be a really, really cool thing to watch on screen. And we get this shot of the Lannisters in, I'm guessing it's at the Twins, but it could be in Riverrun, it could be, you know, post-siege, whether they're successful with the siege, but it looks a bit like a wedding. I think this wedding is going to turn out pretty bad for Walder Frey. I think it's going to be a real nice parallel to Season 3. I think that it's going to be something to do with the Hound. I think that's been hinted at quite a bit, and I think that'll be a nice payback for the audience. I think Walder Frey will finally meet his end. Just to touch on Littlefinger, because he's going to be floating around this thing, I think that there's a shot here where he looks pretty guilty. I think personally that he's come across Sansa again, and yeah, I think he's going to be the guy who is going to be going a little bit south in the Battle of the Bastards for the northern houses like Stark and, you know, Mormonts and all that, and I think he's going to come in with the bail. I think his part will be fairly limited this year, but I think he will feel terrible for what he's done to Sansa, and he will need to make up for it, but obviously he's going to want something from it. There's going to be a big dilemma after this battle, who's going to take what, and what are they going to do about the coming of the White Walkers, of course. Going down into King's Landing, really, really complicated season this year. Obviously going terribly with the Faith Militant, and I think that there's going to have to be some sort of resolve between the Tyrells and the Lannisters to get themselves out of it. They are going to attempt to release Marjorie and Loras, but only to have them converted to the Faith, and that's just going to create even more tension between the two parties. With Tommen and Cersei, Tommen is going to eventually go against his mum in a trial, and, you know, testify against her. Even I think that he's, you know, the actor said that he's had a big challenge this year, and that he's got a new goal, and I think that goal is obviously to do with Marjorie, but is in turn going to pitch him against his mother. So that's going to be a really, really interesting juxtaposition of characters, and really hard for Cersei as well, because the only thing she has left holding her in the show really is Tommen. So when that's pitched against that, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. We get this really weird shot of somebody stabbing somebody in the back, and it just screams the Kingslayer scene for me, where Jaime kills the Mad King Aerys Targaryen a long time before the series starts. And, you know, with all of the Bran thing going on, I think that this ties into that, but what the relevance of it is, I have no idea. I think it may be just an opportunity to get some more backstory to Jaime and make us feel a little bit sorry for Jaime. Quick touch on the Greyjoys, because obviously they're coming back in a big way. There we get this shot of Yara, who looks as if she's about to see Theon again, who will have made his way home, as is mentioned in episode 2. He's making his way home. Theon looks completely broken. But there is a segment from the books which I think is coming up, and it's going to be a King's Moot, which is basically where the Islanders get together. Islanders decide who is going to be king, essentially, and we get Euron, a shot of Euron here, who's on a bridge. That's a little bit spoilery, but basically they'll get together and they'll decide who's going to be king. I don't know how this is going to pan out, but we get another shot of Yara, and it looks like that she's going to across the Narrow Sea, because she's kissing a slave with a tear on her face, which I think is from Volantis. It looks like that she'll be following the Victarion bookline story to meet Daenerys. The way that could cross over towards the end of Season 6 and Season 7 is that they offer the Iron Fleet to Daenerys to get her Dothraki across the sea. Alright, moving on to Meereen and Braavos. I'll start with Braavos. Arya's storyline is going to be, she said that herself, it's going to be very, very dark. She's going to get a lot thrown at her this year. We get a lot of shots of her getting her beaten up by the waif. There was a chapter that George R.R. Martin released called Mercy, and I think that they'll be playing that out. I think, you know, there's this, they do a play within the book where it's acting out, I think, the ongoings in King's Landing from previous seasons. Makes out Tyrion to be very evil, and, you know, Sansa to be evil, and I think that's going to be a really fun way for Arya to sort of realise that she needs to go home. But I think that will be right at the end of Season 6. I think that will come as sort of episode 8, and then maybe 10. I think she'll start making her way back, and I think that will sort of mirror kind of Daenerys' storyline as well. I'll briefly mention Jorah and Daario. Very hard to see where this is going. I know that there were some scenes that were filmed for later in the series where Dany and Daario leading what looked to be some sort of Khalasar Dothraki thing, but there was no Jorah But obviously in all the promotional images we've seen Jorah with his grayscale and talking to Daario. So I think somewhere along the line we're going to lose Jorah, and I think it'll be a real sad kind of ending for Jorah. He will never quite fulfill his destiny, you know, his devotion to Dany. He'll never get to see her again, and I think it's not karma for all the bad things that he's done, but he's that kind of the sad hero of it all, that he would actually, and it would be perfect Game of Thrones for him not to get the payoff, you know. And finally we get to Meereen, and I'll throw this in with Dany as well because it's hard to see where Tyrion thinks he's going to go. Obviously things are going to get quite bad. We get that shot of the pyramid where it looks, you know, it almost looks as if they've got some sort of barrack that's like, or like a tower thing that's moving towards Meereen, so it looks almost as if they're under siege. So I think Tyrion eventually is going to, with the help of Varys, and with the suggestion perhaps of the Red Priestess, who we've got this year, are going to move to get the dragons out, which we saw at the end of the trailer. And I think that this is going to end quite badly for everybody in Meereen, and I think that this will be the last season that we see Meereen. I think that Dany's had problems there ever since she's not necessarily made the place a better place. In fact, it's gone worse. I think she just needs to get out of there. She needs to go to Westeros, and I think that's what her whole Dothraki thing is going to be about. It's going to be about taking her to the brink again. But Drogon's going to come in. They're going to see the power that Drogon has, and I think the story of Meereen and in Vaes Dothrak is pretty simple this year. I don't think there's a whole lot to it. I think that, you know, some promotional images suggested that Drogon is going to be burning quite a lot of Vaes Dothrak. The Dothraki responded to power, and I think that they're going to follow her once more. As I say, I think they will catch the Iron Fleet, which may be headed by Yara. So I think that'll be a really interesting crossover between the Greyjoys and the Targaryens, and I think she'll end up in Westeros. But I think that it will all be laid waste by the time she gets there. Which leads me on to the White Walkers. It's hard to say, but I think that the war is going to come down at the end of Season 6. I think there's going to be the jaw-dropping moment where you think, oh fuck, what the hell is going to happen next year with the wall down? And that's when Daenerys arrives, and it's a throwback to her vision in Season 2 where she sees, you know, King's Landing and the Red Keep broken and covered in snow. The White Walkers, you know, they're walking through fire. It looks as if they're against somebody. That fire would have been created by man to stop them, and it's a way of kind of saying, fuck you, they walk through it. So do I think that they join in the Battle of the Bastards? No. I think that that will be a standalone battle between, you know, the two halves of the North. And I think the fire may be the last kind of stand for the Night's Watch. I think now the very depleted Night's Watch, spearheaded by Alistair Thorne, will kind of die. And I think that may even be one of the last shots of the season, is the Night's King walking through fire. That's how I'm going to leave this video. All my views are sort of inspired by other YouTubers, you know, like Charlie of Westeros, and Charlie from Emergency Awesome, and Tony Teflon, and James of Thrones, and all these guys you should check out. I've tried to kind of take loads of their ideas and some of my own and piece them together in perhaps ways that haven't been thought of before. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Yeah, if you like this, then subscribe and like it, and yeah, I'm going to do loads more of this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. So yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm Josh. Peace.